What is going on, guys? Miles here, and in this video we'll be taking a look at weapon variants in COD WWII which are practically impossible to unlock. So I actually had no idea this was a thing until I saw a post on the World War II subreddit by user LeadR95. I'll leave a link to his post in the description if you want to check it out for yourselves, but first off I'll explain why these variants are impossible to get, and then we'll go through the list of these variants. So you guys may remember a while ago there were a bunch of variants which were only available in common supply drops, which never really made a lot of sense. It was pretty stupid and it made them much more difficult to get compared to some of the other epic and heroic variants in the game. But a few weeks ago you guys also may remember Sledgehammer Games made a bunch of changes to how supply drops work in the game, and we kind of assumed that this problem was solved. But it turns out that the problem wasn't solved, and in fact you may have considered it to be worse than the state it was previously, because those variants which were only available in common supply drops, rather than just adding them to rare supply drops, Sledgehammer Games just removed them from the common supply drops, making them impossible to get from supply drops now. I have no idea about the logic behind this, and Sledgehammer Games didn't make this very clear at all, so I think most players had no idea that these variants are now impossible to get in supply drops. So that's why some variants in the game are now impossible to get, but which ones specifically am I talking about? There's actually quite a lot of them, and if you guys have any of them, then you're pretty damn lucky, because you must have gotten them in a common supply drop before these changes were made. So starting off, every single bar variant except for the epic Old Captain variant is now impossible to get. The Old Captain variant was one of the special orders during March which you could have gotten, but that is the only way. Every variant for the M1928 SMG is impossible to get besides the Wilco variant, as well as the Handler variant. The Wilco variant you unlock by getting level 5 social score, and the Handler variant was one of the weekly order rewards a couple of weeks ago. For the LMGs, for the Bren light machine gun, every single variant is now impossible to get, and for the Lewis light machine gun, every variant is impossible to get besides the epic landship variant, which you can get by reaching level 11 social score. I believe the only exclusive variant I have is the English Oak for the Lewis. As for the shotguns, every single M30 variant is now impossible to get, and for the combat shotgun, every variant is impossible to get besides the Disruptor variant, which you can actually get in supply drops still. The only variants which you can get for the Kar 98K are the Epic Fallen variant, which you can get by maxing the Mountain Division, the Heroic Nightmare 2 variant, which you can get by reaching social level 15, and the Epic Torpedo variant, which is currently one of the weekly orders. The Carabin Patriot variant seems to have some problems as well, as apparently even Activision don't know what's going on with that variant. And finally, for the pistols, every P08 variant is impossible to get, and for the 1911, every variant is impossible except for the Jupiter variant, which you can craft in the collections. So this is actually a pretty big deal, because I listed off a lot of weapons there. I believe that was like 9 in total, and obviously each of those weapons has a lot of variants, so we're missing out on probably like 30 or 40 variants in the game for some bizarre reason, which I have no idea of the logic behind this move, but that's a lot of variants in the game which you would probably think you can get if you just look at the list, but it actually is impossible. And the most ridiculous thing about this is that if you have every variant in the game which is currently possible to get, and then you open a heroic weapon bribe or an epic weapon bribe, you will not get one of the variants which has been removed from common or rare supply drops. I did mention earlier that some of the variants are possible to get through the weekly orders, such as the Handler variant for the M1928, and that variant specifically was one of the variants which was removed from supply drops. So what I think Sledgehammer Games are doing is adding these impossible to get variants into the weekly orders, and that will be the only way to get them. So I would recommend completing those if possible, but they aren't exactly viable to get. Personally, I'm actually pretty annoyed with this update, and I really want Sledgehammer Games to address this, because I'm guessing like pretty much everyone in the player base thought these variants were possible to get, and with the update this was not the case, and I think it may have misled a lot of people, which is a pretty big deal considering there's a lot of like heroic weapon bribes which you can buy using real money. If people were expecting certain variants in the game and it turns out they have no chance of actually getting them. But there we have it, that is all you guys need to know about the variants which are now impossible to get in Call of Duty World War II. Let me know if you have any of these variants down in the comments below, and also subscribe for more Call of Duty World War II, but I'll see you guys in another video.